What if I told you one of the greatest point guards in WNBA history was barely recruited? Another future National Player of the Year was ranked around 80th in her own high school class. And one future Hall of Famer didn't just get overlooked by major colleges. She went undrafted by the WNBA too. Recruiting rankings are supposed to tell us who the future stars are. But these 5 players turn those evaluations into receipts. And number 1 might be the greatest scouting Miss Women's Basketball has ever seen.
Prime Field!
Before we start, one important rule. We're not just picking players who became better than expected. We're measuring what I'm calling the developmental gap, the difference between a player's recruiting reputation and what she eventually became in college and the WNBA. That's an editorial ranking system, not an official basketball statistic. And recruiting rankings themselves are snapshots affected by exposure, geography, physical development, and projection. And that's why 2 huge WNBA names you might expect here, Jonquel Jones and Becky Hamilton, didn't make the final list. Jones had legitimate national recruiting attention and signed with Clemson. Laney Hamilton was actually ranked 11th nationally and 2nd among wings. Amazing career stories? Absolutely. But recruiting misses? Not in the same way. So let's count down the 5 names the evidence actually supports. Maddy Siegrist is a perfect example of why you have to be careful with the word unranked. We don't have strong enough archived evidence to slap a specific national ranking on her. What we do know is that Siegrist came out of Our Lady of Lourdes in New York after averaging roughly 32 points and 13 rebounds as a senior, and still wasn't treated like the future top 3 WNBA pick she would eventually become. Then Villanova happened. Siegrist scored 2,896 career points. She became Villanova's all-time leading scorer. She finished her career as the Big East's all-time scoring leader. And February 11, 2023 might be the perfect snapshot of her transformation. 50 points against Seton Hall, 20 makes on 26 shots. And during her final season, she scored at least 20 points in all 37 games, the longest Division of men's or women's 20-point streak of the 21st century, according to Villanova. Dallas eventually selected her 3rd overall in the 2023 WNBA draft. She averaged a career-high 12.7 points per game in 2025, although her 2026 scoring numbers have come back down. That's why she's 5th. The recruiting to draft transformation is incredible, but compared with the 4 players ahead of her, we're still waiting to see how high the professional ceiling goes. Alysha Clark's story is almost 2 underdog stories in one. First, she took the non-traditional college route. She started at Belmont, not one of the sport's traditional recruiting factories. Then she became an absolute scoring machine. Across Belmont and Middle Tennessee, Clark finished with 2,865 points and 1,378 rebounds. She led the nation in scoring in back-to-back seasons. 27.5 points per game in 2008, 0.9. Then 28.3 the following year. So naturally, you might think the WNBA version of Clark would become another high-volume scorer. Wrong. She was drafted 17th overall in 2010 and initially struggled to lock down a permanent WNBA roster spot. Then she reinvented herself. Defense, spacing, versatility, winning basketball. Clark became a 3-time WNBA champion twice with Seattle and again with Las Vegas in 2023. She made the All-Defensive First Team in 2020 and won 6th Player of the Year in 2023. By 2026, she had signed with Dallas. That's what makes Clark fascinating. Scouts didn't necessarily miss that she could play basketball. They underestimated what her game could become. Her college identity got her noticed. Her willingness to completely rebuild that identity gave her longevity. Population aside, just look at the basketball pathway. Megan Gustafson came from tiny Port Wing, Wisconsin, and ESPN Hoop Girls rated her around number 80 nationally. 80, not 8th. 8-0. Then she went to Iowa and basically destroyed the projection. Gustafson finished with 2,804 points and 1,460 rebounds. As a senior, 27.8 points per game. Nearly 70% shooting from the field, 1,001 points in a single season, 33 double-doubles. And in 2019, she became the consensus National Player of the Year. That alone makes the recruiting gap ridiculous. But then came another humbling evaluation. Despite that college dominance, Dallas took her just 17th overall in the 2019 WNBA draft, and yet Gustafson kept finding ways to stay. By 2025, she was a WNBA champion with Las Vegas. Then she joined the Portland Fire for their inaugural 2026 season and produced flashes like a 22-point performance against Indiana. Now, is she a 6-time All-Star, like the players coming up? No. But if we're measuring sheer distance between high school recruiting expectations and eventual basketball achievement, she is one of the strongest cases in this entire countdown. And number 2 is somehow ranked even closer to the middle of the pack. Courtney Vandersloot wasn't invisible, but she was ranked 64th nationally and 35th among guards by Scout.com. 34 guards were supposedly better prospects. Think about that for a second. Because at Gonzaga, Vandersloot finished with 2,073 points and 1,118 assists. She became the first Division I player, men's or women's, to reach 2,000 career points and 1,000 career assists. In 2010-11, she recorded 367 assists, an NCAA single-season record at the time. Suddenly, number 64 wasn't looking like number 64 anymore. Chicago took Vandersloot 3rd overall in 2011. And the WNBA career somehow made the original recruiting evaluation look even worse. 5 times All-Star, 4 times All-WNBA, 2 times champion. She helped Chicago win the 2021 championship, then won another title with New York in 2024. By 2026, she was sitting 2nd on the WNBA's career assists leaderboard. So here's the debate. Should Vandersloot actually be number 1? Because unlike some overlooked prospects who eventually became useful pros, Vandersloot became one of the greatest passers the league has ever seen. But I still can't put her above this final player, because number 1 was overlooked at basically every single level. Becky Hammon's the gold standard. She came out of Rapid City Stevens in South Dakota as an accomplished high school player. And yet, major programs largely stayed away. ESPN would later describe her as hardly recruited. Colorado State took the chance, and Hammon responded by becoming one of the greatest players in school history. 2,740 career points, 3-time AP All-American, 3-time WAC Player of the Year. And in 1998-99, she helped lead Colorado State to a 33-3 record and the Sweet 16. At that point, surely basketball had learned its lesson. Nope. Hammon entered the 1999 WNBA draft. Nobody selected her. Undrafted. She eventually made the New York Liberty roster anyway, and then came 16 WNBA seasons, 6 All-Star selections, multiple All-WNBA honors, recognition on the league's top 15 at 15, and top 20 at 20 anniversary teams, and ultimately induction into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2023. That's almost impossible to beat. College recruiters underestimated her, WNBA teams underestimated her, and she still forced her way into basketball history. Here's the scary part. And there's probably another Becky Hammon or Courtney Vandersloot sitting outside today's elite recruiting rankings right now. Maybe she's too small. Maybe she plays in the wrong state. Maybe scouts aren't sure what position she'll defend. Maybe she hasn't had the exposure. In 5 years from now, everybody will pretend the talent was obvious. It wasn't. That's what makes recruiting so fascinating. Rankings can identify talent. They cannot perfectly predict development. So I want your ranking. Is Becky Hammon the biggest recruiting miss ever? Should Vandersloot be number 1? Or does Megan Gustafson, jumping from roughly the 83rd ranked recruit to National Player of the Year, give her the biggest developmental gap of them all? Drop your answer below. And if you love women's basketball stories that go deeper than the box score, subscribe to Prime Field because the next superstar Scouts missed might already be playing. We just don't know her name yet.
Prime Field!